In the previous video, we worked through an exercise that had us adding a column of numbers, and we used the click plus method. You know, equals, click, plus, click, plus, click, plus, and so forth. Well, this way of doing things is okay if you only have 8 numbers in the column, like we have here. But what if you have 8,000? Well, you'll be taking your work home with you. Good thing for us that Excel has an easy way to do almost everything you'll ever want to do, and nothing could be easier than adding a column of numbers. Let's open another workbook and I'll show you how. If you still have any workbooks open, feel free to close them now. Let's go to the Project Files folder and open the Lesson 3 folder and then open the Sum function. Our objective now is going to be to add up this column of numbers. And rather than use the click plus method, we'll save some time by using the sum function. Excel provides over 330 functions for us to use as a sort of shorthand method for doing something that would normally involve a lot of steps, like this. It might help to think of a function in the same way we think of the stenotype machine a court reporter uses. You know, she takes down every word that's spoken in the courtroom. The machine allows the reporter to record testimony much faster than trying to write it all down with a pen or even with a word processor. In much the same way, Excel functions allow us to perform certain tasks with lightning speed by cutting out a lot of the steps. Every function has a name. A name is always one word that, for the most part, tries to indicate what the function does. For example, you could probably easily guess what the sum function and the average function do. Every function has a set of parentheses. The parentheses contain the function arguments. To the function, the arguments answer the question, what do I need to know to do my job? For example, if the sum function's job is to sum something, it has to know what to sum. Well, the arguments answer that question. Let's take a look at this in action. Here we have a column of numbers, and we just want to add these up. We'll use the sum function to do that. Since functions are used in formulas, and all formulas have to start with an equals sign, we'll start this formula out by typing in equals, and then the name of the function, which of course is sum. Now, Excel doesn't care if you type in capital letters or lowercase letters. Either one will be fine. Next comes the parentheses. I'm going to type in the opening parenthesis, but I'll have to remember when I'm finished that this requires a closing parenthesis as well. What goes inside the parentheses? Why, the function arguments. And what's the arguments for the sum function asking? What do I need to sum? And for the sum function, all we have to do is tell it the range of cells that we're interested in. Grab the mouse and click on the 15 and drag down and select to the 24 there. Here you can see that Excel fills in the formula B2 colon B15. This is like a peanut butter sandwich, with the B2 being the top slice of bread, the B15 being the bottom slice of bread, and everything in the middle, that's the colon, is the peanut butter. So B2 to B15, that means include all the cells in this range. Now you can see the dotted box, or the marquee as it's called, surrounding all the cells that are included in this formula. Now you just close in the parentheses and hit enter. And there you go. For practice, I suggest you delete the contents of the yellow cell and repeat this exercise on your own. I've given you a little cheat sheet there on the right-hand side that has all the instructions on how to do it. Go ahead and pause the video, work it through, and then turn me back on when you're ready. All right, did you get through it without making any mistakes? Well, if you make mistakes, here's one way you can fix it. Let me delete this formula. I'll start again with equals, sum, open the parenthesis, and this time I'm just going to grab part of these numbers. Watch the dotted box. Okay, so I've got B6 to B15. That's only part of the column of numbers. I'll hit enter. Now I may not realize that I made a mistake, but if you take a look in the yellow cell, you'll see there's a green tick mark in the top left-hand corner. That indicates that this cell is trying to get our attention for some reason. If you click on the cell, a little info button appears on the left-hand side. When you hover over that button, a little tip comes up that says the formula in this cell refers to a range that has additional numbers adjacent to it. That means that you may have missed something, and it's just pointing that out to you. Now, if you click on the button, it gives you some options for dealing with this. If, in fact, this is a mistake, you could just say, Update formula to include cells, and watch this. It changes the formula. The result comes back in at 408. And if you look in the formula bar, you can see that it now does include B2 through B15. Another way of solving a problem like that might be this. Again, I'll type equals, sum, open parenthesis, just select part of the list. And now before I hit enter, I look at that and go, oh my gosh, I missed some of these numbers. What do I do now? Well, if you haven't hit enter yet, and you can still see the dotted box, just grab your mouse and just drag down through the numbers that you do want. Just reselect everything just like that. And then as always, hit enter to finish. I think you'll agree with me that this way of doing things is much faster than trying to type in the formulas one cell at a time. But it's not the fastest way to do things. We still have to look at the auto sum button, which we'll do in the next video. But for now, I have a couple other things to show you about typing in the formulas. Let's go to the Formula AutoComplete worksheet. Here's the same column of numbers and the same yellow cell. And all we're going to do here is once again put in the sum function. So let's start out equals, and I'm going to type S for sum. And we didn't point this out the last time, but every time you type equals and a letter, this little dialog box appears. This is called the Formula AutoComplete box. And this shows you all the functions that begin with the letter you've typed. Since we started with an S, here are all the functions that begin with S. If I continue to type, like the U, now it filters out some of this list, and we're seeing only those functions that begin with SU. If I go one further and type M, now I see only those functions that begin with SUM. And you can see there are more than just one. Sum, SUMIF, SUMIFs. There's a whole pile of them here. Well, it turns out that sum is actually the one we want. And it tells us right here in this little tip that comes off to the right that the sum function adds all the numbers in a range of cells. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. So at this point, what we're going to do is just hit Tab on the keyboard. And that puts in the opening parenthesis for us. And at this point, we just select the numbers. And we're not even going to type in the closing parenthesis. We're just going to hit enter, and Excel's going to put that in for us. Okay, we'll go back and select that cell, look in the formula bar. You can see that, in fact, yes, Excel did close that parenthesis for us. All right, let's try this again. I'm going to do equals, the first letter of the function, S. Let's do one more, U. Now, rather than type in the final M, I'm just going to use the keyboard to nudge down to select the M. Then again, I'll just hit Tab on the keyboard. This completes the spelling and adds the opening parenthesis. Okay, now I'm just going to hit Escape to get out of there, and we'll do one more thing. Equals SU. Now I'm just going to grab the mouse and just double-click right there on the function, sum. Again, it completes the spelling, puts in the final M, and opens the parentheses. And now it can't get any easier than this, can it? Just select the numbers, hit enter, and you're home free. Now, I did want to point out one other thing about using AutoComplete. Once again, equals SU. I'll nudge down to the M, hit Tab. Notice this little bar that appears underneath the function. It tells us the name of the function, and then inside the parentheses, it shows us what the arguments are supposed to be. You'll notice that the first argument is in bold, indicating that that is a mandatory argument, and the second one is not bold, meaning that it's just, well, optional. Okay, again, we'll just select those numbers, hit enter. You gotta love it. We're going to continue to work with the sum function in the next video, but before we get there, I'd like to show you some cool stuff here. If you go to the ribbon and click on the Formulas tab, you'll see this group called Function Library. This is all about working with functions, and here the functions are all broken down into categories. We're going to spend a lot of time in the function library in the intermediate or level 2 class, but for now you might just like to know that if you click on one of these categories, you're going to get a big old drop-down list that'll show you a list of all the functions that belong to that category. The Math and Trig category is where the sum function lives, and you can scroll down until you find it. If you hover over any of these function names, you'll see an extended screen tip pop up that shows you the name of the function, the arguments that are supposed to be used, and gives you a brief description of what that function does. At this point, you can simply click on the sum function, and this opens the Function Arguments dialog box, where you could just go out then and select these numbers just like we did before. Now we are going to come back and spend some time in the function arguments dialog box later on in the beginning series, but not right now. We're just going to say OK, let it accept that formula, and looky there, I put that formula in under the yellow cell because I really wasn't paying attention to my active cell there at that point, which in hindsight brings up a good point. You always want to make sure that you look to see where your active cell is before you enter formulas, as obviously I didn't do right here.